We have author Farrah Ali on the call here tonight. I really appreciate your time, Farrah. But before we get things started, I always like to give everybody your contact information because I know there's quite a bit of content there, as well as a great offer regarding your book and some additional bonuses there. So go over to Farrah Ali, and that's FARRAHALI.org. But and you're going to find her book, and her book is going to say a lot. And we're going to start things off with your title of your book. Actually, it's called The Diaries of a Female Real Estate Investor. Learn how a single mom went from 80,000 in debt to a multi-million-dollar portfolio. And that was done in a pretty short amount of time. I mean, you've been in real estate since 2014.
Yes.
And to have that type of turnaround, being a single mom, and I understand multiple jobs, a lot of people would even struggle finding the time to add real estate to this. How did you get to that decision point where you had to jump in?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. So yeah, to try to jump in, just jumping into how I got in. The decision point for that was based off of a situation that I was in. I had just gone through a separation, and I had to leave with basically nothing based on the situation. So I kind of just walked out into an empty home with no furniture or anything with my two kids. And I had to figure out, how am I going to start from nothing and build myself up? And I already knew that I wasn't going to get any financial support for the kids because my ex wasn't working at the time. So, I walk in and I'm like, okay, well, the one thing I did have was I had a full-time job. So I had a stable job, but it was just enough for the day-to-day income, the day-to-day expenses that come in, right? So I'm like, I know I'm going to need more. So what I did was I started, the first thing I did was, which any, person that's in corporate or, kind of gotten an education would do. And that's like, let me go back and get my MBA. Because in my mind, I thought when you go back and get your MBA that you're going to get paid this loads of money. And then when that did happen and I graduated from my MBA and I let my, work know, they were all happy and all that. But, what's the most they're going to give you? 10, 15, 20%. So when I saw those paychecks and after the taxes were taken away on there, I'm like, well, this is great, but this is only covers a couple of my kids' activities I want to put them in. Mm-hmm. So then I went back to the drawing board and I was like, okay, how can I get the kind of wealth that I'm looking for? So after researching online, everything kind of led to real estate investing. And I did a little bit of stocks research and all of that, but everything, like the most safest form of investing from my research was real estate. So I decided to jump into real estate investing at that point.
Sure. Well, you just brought up, you just got out of school, you got your MBA. I'm sure there's a lot of school debt. You're trying to support two kids. Your income doesn't sound like it was ideal for the situation. Where did you find that initial money to get started?
Well, what I did was I ended up going to a meetup. So one of these free meetings with real estate investors in the area. And from there, that led me to a seminar that I took. It was a 3-day seminar and it absolutely blew my mind because the knowledge that I was getting and the support that I saw that this group had, I was like, okay, this is something that I want to do. Now, these seminars initially are, not that expensive. They're usually between a couple $100s. But if you want additional coaching from that point, it's a lot of money. It's in the double digits, thousands of dollars. So, but the one thing they did tell me was that this specific group that I was working with had a lot of private money lenders, and that they would actually lend 100% purchase and 100% rehab, which really got my attention because I didn't have any money. I mean, I didn't have a savings at all. So that kind of like, this is something that I think I could do as long as I find the right deal. The numbers just have to work. So I had to find a property where I knew that the purchase price and the rehab, once I had that, it would appraise enough so that I could have, when I refinance it, that it would pay the lender off completely. So I had to be very selective and careful and scrutinize my deals before I actually did them. But as far as the money for the course, I mean, for me personally, I had a 0% credit card at the time that I got, and it was 0% for a year. So I put the whole thing on my credit card, knowing that I don't care what I did, I was going to make something happen while I was in class. So it was just more like of a mindset, and also a little bit about knowing who you are as a person. I know for me personally, when I'm under pressure, I perform. Whereas if I don't have a lot on my plate that day, I'll sleep in, or, can get a little bit lazy. But if I know I have a booked schedule, I'll go out there and perform. So knowing that, I knew I would put myself in a very tight situation where I would have to pay off all that money in a year. But you know what? It happened before a year, and it's just about kind of knowing yourself and going forward and making that move.
Sure. Yeah. So it sounds like you don't spend a lot of time. Well, what's always great to hear is when you learn something and it blows your mind like that, you got over whatever fear and took some immediate action. That seems to be the case with a lot of people, that there's a lot of analysis paralysis, and they don't take that action. So when you got into this seminar and you saw all this and heard all this, did it almost sound a little too good to be true? Like, what were your fears and apprehensions at first?
Actually, it didn't, because the guys that put this on had their properties all listed out for us to see. So a lot of us, what we did was we just went on Google to see who owned the property, and there was hundreds of them, right? So I know that a lot of times, like, salespeople come out and they, pitch this whole real estate program, but when you actually get to know them, they really don't have anything. But these guys were a little different. They were unique. And so when I did that research and I did my due diligence, then I realized that, this is the real deal. And I just, jumped in.
Sure. So, you've been doing this since 2014 here now. How many rental properties do you have? How many doors are you up to now?
38. I have 38 rental properties. So 37 single family homes and 1 multi-unit.
Sure. You've accumulated that in pretty quick order. So when you're kind of a mentor to quite a few people. So what have you been seeing then are some of their biggest barriers when they get into the real estate market?
I would say the number one biggest barrier that I've seen is, honestly, it's mindset. It's the way they think. I've noticed that with a lot of people. A lot of people don't believe in their own abilities, and some people don't want to do the work. So people do see me like going out. I see a property come up on my phone. I pretty much drop everything unless that whatever I'm dropping is a priority. But I'm like, okay, this becomes priority. So every day I prioritize differently, right? So if let's just say I'm in the kitchen cooking and I see a property come up, at that point, if it's that good, I'll drop what I'm doing, order out, go look at that property and come back and, finish for the next day. So it's mindset and it's action, actually. But I would say a lot of it is just believing in yourself, really is it. And then some people don't want to invest in themselves. Like, they'll go out and they'll spend thousands of dollars getting a new purse or clothes or a car, but they don't want to spend that same amount of money investing in themselves by getting a mentor. And when you get a mentor, you got to get a mentor who has already done it. Like, you really need to dig deep into what they've done. But they're like decisions that people, for some reason, they don't feel like it's worth it. And maybe it's, like I said, they don't believe in themselves, or they don't want to do the risk and reward or whatever is not there. But I'd say mindset is number one. Everything else kind of just falls in place. Really, it does. It's a process.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've always, and maybe it's something that has come to the forefront of thought over the past few years. I find it really interesting how we will almost do anything we can to buy the new smartphone or the new television, or literally spend hours binge watching a show on Netflix. All of that time and money and resources that could be spent on improving oneself. It's it's kind of shocking, really, when you take a
Yeah,
second.
it is. I think it's because of the immediate reward, right? When you go out and buy that nice car, you feel a certain way immediately. Whereas this is you got to put work in before you can, before you feel that. But what you do is you make it exciting. You should belong to a part of a group or have friends that do this together, and it does make it exciting. You got to kind of put yourself in those situations and don't see it as work.
Yeah, that goes back to being around those 5 people that you hang
Oh
out with
yeah.
the most, right? The concept there is actually usually rings pretty true. You
Oh
hang
yeah.
around with those people. If you want to be successful, you should probably hang out with those people that are.
Yes, it's absolutely 100% true.
So when you were getting into this, then you're essentially building your network and trying to uh, finding those successful people to learn from. Where did you start?
So yeah, so when I joined this mentorship program, and there's 20 to 30 different investors that are learning at the same time, and they're all at different levels. Some people already had 20 plus properties in their portfolio, and they just wanted to scale up. What attracted them was the fact that they would get 100% financing on purchase and on rehab, because when you don't have that, you can only use so much of your own money, and then you don't have that capital to work from, right? So a lot of seasoned investors were joining that program. Newer investors are all kind of all over the board, and I started hanging out with people and becoming friends with them, and that's kind of how I built my network. And to this day, I still am really good friends. I mean, my 5 closest friends are, besides my sisters and family, are real estate investors.
Sure.
And the thing
Well,
is, we all encourage each other. We inspire each other. If somebody gets a deal in the group, we all celebrate. We go out to celebrate, and then we just help each other kind of, rise.
you know, you earlier we talked about that instant gratification. I really have found that is important. What you just said there is celebrate those milestones and celebrate those wins. Reward yourself a little bit and don't let it become a mundane thing. Eventually people have a tendency, we just kind of get into the routine. We're doing this. This is it becomes our job, but we got to recognize those milestones and celebrate them with our loved ones and friends and what have you.
Yes, and the thing is that you have to find the right people to celebrate with, because sometimes, even like sometimes it could be with family or people you thought were friends, and you go to celebrate a milestone and they're not actually happy inside. And so
So,
you have to know who's in your corner. That's really, really important. And
right.
eventually you'll be able to feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to jump ship on you here a little bit, change the topic slightly because I'm curious as to how you're finding your deals, what you're doing here today, and maybe some strategies and tactics that you're using. But before we do, I want to remind everybody again, farrahali.org for more information. Farrah has her book, plus she is a coach as well. So there's some coaching opportunities there. So definitely check that out. But I'll make sure to include those links in the show notes. So, Farrah, when we were, like I mentioned, I kind of gave you a heads up. What are you doing right now with we're kind of hopefully coming out of COVID and these lockdowns? Have you gotten busy? Like what does the market look like for you? And what strategies are you using to find the next opportunity?
So let me go back and start with the strategies I used to use back in 2014, 2015, 2016 when I first started. Um,
Sure.
I used 80% of the properties that I acquired were MLS deals,
Sure.
so on the market. And then as I became more experienced, I started finding more off-market deals. And then, just kind of been scaling up. My first year I was only able to do one property, and it was because, like I said, I had to be very careful because I did not have capital. So I had to make sure that the purchase and the rehab was, it was a price that it would appraise for, you know, we usually, what we call it is, you've probably heard the BRRRR strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
you buy, you purchase, and then you refinance it, and then you pay off your lender 100%, right? So I have no
Right.
money invested in the deal. That's how I was able to scale up. But yeah, most of my properties were MLS, and then I was able to acquire some off-market deals. And then during COVID, so lately, you know, the market's been crazy, right? Since COVID hit, everybody's paying $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 over list price. So
Mm.
what I've done is I kind of changed my strategy and have gone more off-market deals. I did actually get 2 deals off the MLS recently, like 4 or 5 months ago, and I just in the process of flipping those. I just closed on one yesterday. I'm closing on one another next week as well. So you can still find them on the MLS. You just have to make sure that you have different strategies you use to acquire those. And then what I've been doing is I've kind of been out there more, so people know that I'm an investor. So lately I've been attracting, over the past couple of years, more wholesalers. So wholesalers are coming to me because they know I buy cash and giving me, you know, offering me their properties. And once I work with a wholesaler, and they know how easy I am to work with, you know, we buy cash, all of that. They keep bringing me deals. So that's how I'm able to continue doing deals. So prior to COVID, I had about 25 rentals, and now I'm at 38. So I've been able to do like 12 properties in the span of a year and a half. So it hasn't slowed down for me at all.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it. That's awesome. But we got to back up for a second.
Yes.
I've been told, and most people, like when they get first into real estate investing, we've been told time and time again, there's no deals to be found on the MLS.
Oh, there absolutely are deals to be found on the MLS. I would say 70% of all my 38 deals are found on the MLS.
So when you look at those MLS opportunities, like what are you looking for? And in the end, what are your winning strategies to get your offers accepted through the MLS?
So I work backwards. So I look at, for the first thing I do when I look at a property is what are the comps, right? To see what the ARV is.
Mhm.
And then what I do is I'm to the point right now where I can just look at some pictures right online and guesstimate what a rehab is going to be. So I'll do that. I'll figure out the rehab through the pictures, and then I'll immediately, like, a strategy I use is that I act fast. So I immediately contact the agent and see if I can put in an offer. If I can put in an offer without looking at it, I will. If I can't, I'll go make a trip out there and take a look at it. Every agent is different, so you can't really say, but you got to try all strategies.
Mhm.
You'll be surprised to see how many deals I've gotten just because I'm, the first one. Because some of these people are like, as long as I get a good price, I don't want to be showing the property for days and days. And, so as long as they know from the seller what they're okay with. So that's kind of a strategy that I use to get also sometimes. So then what I do is once I get it under, let's just say I didn't look at it and I got it under contract, I'll immediately go take a look at it, take my contractor, or you could take an inspector, whoever, and just make sure that the rehab estimate you had is in line with what it is and that there's no foundation issues or anything, that because you do have 5 days of attorney approval period.
Right.
At that point to cancel. So I'll do all my due diligence in those 5 days, but at least I have it under contract. And if I do pay for an inspection report, it's something that's worth it because it's under contract. Sometimes people try to bring an inspector before they have it under contract, and that can get very, very expensive.
Right. No, and then, I've always found it interesting that I've run into quite a few people that go through the work of, they find the property, they go take a look at it, they spend all this time, they might even bring a general contractor or something with, and then decide not to submit the offer because it's they're going to have to ask to buy it for a lot less than what's being asked or something. I've been surprised how many times an offer of ours will be accepted just because we put it in writing. So if you put all that time and effort into it, it's your best interest to at least put it out there. Don't negotiate against yourself. I mean,
right. It doesn't hurt to put in an offer. Just don't put in crazy offers where the agent looks at you like you're crazy, because you never know, down the road, you might have to deal with that agent, in the future. So be respectable with your offer, but just do your homework. And, the first year I looked at so many deals and I put in a bunch of offers. And it took me a while to get my second deal. Like if you read, if anyone reads my book, I kind of talk about how, I lucked out on my first deal. I got a property within a month of joining the class. And the second deal, it took about 9 months. But during those 9 months, what I was doing was I didn't realize, I was getting frustrated with myself. I'm like, why am I not getting my second property? And what I realized was that during that time, I had got so good at going to properties, putting in offers, knowing my numbers, looking at pictures on the internet and figuring that out, that by the second property, when I got that, after that second property, I just scaled up because all that, they say, what is that, that one book where they talk about the 10,000 hours for you to become an expert at something. I felt like I went through that process, and yeah, it was frustrating for that time. But now, in hindsight, knowing what I know now, it was just a lot of practice that ended up benefiting me in the future. So, don't give up when you go through those.
Right. Well, you hit on my catchphrase here, and I say it like repeatedly. You can either put in the 10,000 hours and become an expert, or you can learn from somebody who's already made that investment. And that's what you're doing here. I mean, you're giving a lot of value to everybody regarding this situation. I find it amazing that you started off in real estate investing and you broke down those mental barriers to climb out of debt. And now you have 38 rental properties in what I think is a relatively short amount of time. I mean, this has to been very rewarding. And I read the introduction to your book. It sounds like you had a great family example with your grandmother that kind of paved the way, but it's really impacted you mentally and showing such a great example for your kids.
Yeah, and so just to let you know about my grandmother, I never met her. She passed before I left.
Right.
Before I was born, she passed. But the stories that I would hear, right, and I think those stories kind of stuck with me growing up.
Yeah, that's absolutely awesome. So with everything you had going on, with just to remind everybody, you're a single mom. You have multiple jobs. It sounds like you were even going to school, getting your MBA, getting all this taken care of. You couldn't have done this on your own. What was the magic of building that team?
The support group that I was a part of, right? Actually, my family was out of town, all lived out of state, so I didn't really have much family support to say. So my kids, when I got separated, were 7 and 9. So when I would, they're old enough where I could, put them in the backseat of the car and drive them and take a look at property. So from that angle, I didn't have that kind of support as much. But as far as the real estate part of it, I had part of the program that I'm a part of. We have a lot of investors and we all help each other out. I had the right attorneys. I had the banks that knew exactly what we do. So it wasn't difficult to figure that process out. I would say the one thing that's probably the most challenging to begin with for investors is getting that first property or second property under contract. Mm-hmm. Once you have that under contract, it's just a step-by-step process from there. Yeah, there's going to be some ups and downs with the rehab here and there, but each time you do it, you'll get better and better, and your rehab estimate will get better as you have more experience. So, but just kind of having that support of the lending being available, all the resources being available. If I needed, electrician or plumber, there was a list in that group of people that we could use. I also used some of my own. Mm-hmm. Just kind of, giving back, but then also having that support really helped a lot. I don't think I'd be able to scale up like the way I did if I didn't have that support.
Well, now that you're doing some of this, are you fix and flipping some of these houses too?
Yes, I've actually done a total of six flips. My focus was mainly, rentals, and my goal was to have 25 rentals. And then I was just gonna do some flips and wholesales to pay them off. I've done about 20 wholesales or so. But I kind of just kept going because some of these deals were so good that I did not want to sell them. So I just kept going. But now my focus is I'm actually going to dabble into the Florida market, like near the Tampa area, and do some new construction because I think like that's exciting. So I've actually have a couple lots under contract right now that I want to build on. And the same support group that I'm a part of, we're all gonna go down to Florida and kind of, we've been researching the past 3 to 4 months, and we're gonna, start doing new construction there as well.
Right.
Yeah.
This is something that I've always found absolutely amazing with real estate investors. It seems like, we always joke about the concept that the competition, we're always talking about the competition, but in the end, I don't think I've run into another professional group that is so supportive of each other.
Yeah.
There's always, you're talking about going back to this team, this group all the time for help and resources. It's always amazing what can be garnered from joining these type of groups and helping each other out.
Right. And you're absolutely right. That whole competition thing, it doesn't need to be competitive that way. There's plenty of houses for everybody out there.
Yeah.
So it's like, and we've had an occasion where we might both be after the same property, and I've had people or myself like, you know what, you take this one, I'll get the next one. Like that's the attitude that we have in this group, which is great because people have your back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we're closing in on half an hour here, but before I let you go, I do have 2 more questions for you. But before that, farrahali.org for more information. But I always like to leave people with one actionable item. Like, so if they are getting into real estate investing for the first time, what is the one thing that they should do?
So it depends on your situation. I would say that if you're in a situation where you don't have really any money to play with, anything like that, there's a lot of free meetings that are happening all over the country, right? And I myself, I am co-founder of We Win, which is a platform for women to start getting ready into investing. I mean, men are welcome as well. We started it to support women, but a lot of men are like, hey, we like what you're doing. Can we get in? So we've opened it to everybody. But we do free meetings at least once a year, sometimes a couple times a year. I'm also affiliated with National REI Invest, and they do free meetings at least once a week. Their webinars, they're in person as well. They're in Chicago. However, they do once a month in Tampa, and then they're virtual as well. So start out with these free meetings, get yourself comfortable, and then take the next step, whether that's getting a mentor or being a part of a support group or whatever that is. It's all unique to each person's individual case. But if you really, really want to scale up, if you want to start investing, whatever it is, you should invest in yourself. You should get a mentor because it will save you years. And you know how you keep saying, well, it's only taken me six and a half years to get where I am. Well, it's because of that. It's because I've gotten a mentor and I don't have to spend, a month on area analysis. I have that, that's been taught to me and how to do that sort of stuff. So just giving you an example how that can cut down on time.
No, that's exactly right. And then lastly, is there a question you wished I would have asked you here tonight?
I guess maybe like what's next for me, or
Sure.
So I had mentioned that I'm going to go into investing in Florida, but something that I've been working on for the past year, me and one of my really good friends who's also an investor and an attorney as well, we co-founded We Win Foundation. So that's a foundation where we actually reinvest back into the communities that we invest in. Mm-hmm. We do food drives, turkey drives, back to school drives, whatever we can do to help in areas that are needed. So I think it's really important to have it's great to have, earn all this money and be able to do all the things you wanted to do. But I think it's just as important to give back to the community, have that higher purpose to why you do what you do. And that's something that, I and my friend have been doing along with a couple other people. So, I think that it's good to kind of find out, what you're passionate about and what your higher purpose is, whether it's maybe educating people, giving back to the community, or whatever that is, but finding that and then, using that as a, like a stepping stone, or like, here's what I want to do, and then work your way backwards on how to get there. Because
Yeah.
if you can't fill yourself, then you won't be able to give to others.
Well, I can't ask for a better way to end the show. I really appreciate your time, Farrah. I hope we can chat again sometime. Again, it's farrahali.org, and I'll make sure to include those links in the show notes. But like I said, I hope we can chat again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much again.